Hi friends, today we are going to discuss about disaster and its types. Myself, O. Satish, Assistant Professor in Mechanical Engineering at Akshaya College of Engineering and Technology. In general, a disaster is a sudden, severe, and often catastrophic event that causes significant destruction, and distress, overwhelming a community ability to cope using its own resources. Disaster can be natural, such as earthquake, hurricane, floods, and wildlife, or human-made, including industrial accident, terror attacks, and pandemics. The impact of a disaster can lead to loss of life, injuries, displacement, property damage, and disruption of essential services, affecting the social, economical, and environmental aspects of the affected region. If we say generally in a definition, a disaster is a sudden or great misfortune whereby hospital or community facilities are damaged and functions are impaired. Disaster may be caused by fire, weather, for example, earthquake, hurricane, tornado, and then explosion, terrorist activity, radiation and chemical spills and epidemics are man-made. Disasters are also can be a result of human error, which includes motor vehicle crashes, plane crashes, collapsed building, or similar occurrences. Disasters affects both the young and old. In generally in a worldwide, World Health Organization says about the disaster, if we see, a disaster can be defined as any occurrence that causes damage, ecological disruption, loss of human life, deterioration of health and health services on a scale sufficient to warrant an extraordinary response from outside the affected community or areas. If we see, American Red Cross ARC says about disaster as a definition are a disaster can be defined as an occurrence either nature or man-made that causes human suffering and creates human needed that victims cannot alleviate without assistance. Few of the disaster factors affecting are host factor, if we say age, immunization status, degree of mobility, emotional stability. If we see in an environmental factor, physical factor, chemical factor, biological factor, social factor, and psychological factor, we can able to see. Few of the characteristics of disasters are predictability, controllability, speed of onset, length of forewarning, duration of impact, scope and intensity of impact. If we say as a disaster in a alphabetically meaning, if we see D destruction, I incidents, S suffering, A administrative failure, S sentiment, T tragedies, E eruption of communicable diseases, or research program and its implementation. There are two kinds of disasters we can see. One is natural disaster, another one is a man-made disaster. In natural disasters are primary natural event. The natural disaster category can be divided into 5 disaster groups. They are biological, geophysical, meteorological, hydrological, and climatological. Before we are seeing about the natural disaster, we must know the key factors that have contributed to evolve of the concept of disaster includes advancement in scientific knowledge and technology enabling better understanding and prediction of disaster, increased recognition of the importance of community participation and local knowledge in disaster management, growing awareness of the interconnectedness between environment, social, and economic factors in disaster risk. Lessons learned from historical disaster and their impacts lead to improvement in disaster response and preparedness. The key factor overall, the concept of disasters has evolved from being perceived as inevitable and uncontrollable event to a more proactive and multi-factor approach aimed to reduce risk and building resilience in the fact of potential hazard. By this evolution, we can able to see the factors which have the main area for the natural disasters. In that now we are seeing meteorological disaster. Meteorological disaster are events triggered by a short-lived or small to mesoscale atmospheric process. The storm can be subdivided into tropical storm, extratropical storm, convenience storm. In natural disaster, another type is geophysical disaster. Geophysical disasters are events originating from the solid earth. In that, one type of geophysical disasters are earthquake and another type is a volcano. In earthquake refers to tremendous of the earth. In that, two important factors we can able to see: intensity and epicenter. In the volcano, volcanic activity describes both the transportation of magma or gases on the earth surface which can be accompanied by tremors and eruption. And the third one is mass movement. Mass movement refers to the movement of a quantity of debris that slides down a mountainside under the force of gravity. It can be subdivided into various types: rockfall, subsidence, avalanche. And the third type of hydrological disasters are the event caused by deviation in normal water cycle and overflow of bodies of water caused by the wind setup. It can be further classified into the following: general flood and then coastal flood. The fourth type of natural disasters are climatological disaster. According to the Center of Research on the Epidemiology of Disaster, it is event caused by long-lived measure to macroscale process. They are disaster caused by extreme temperature, drought, and then wildlife. Now we are seeing the fifth type of disaster, biological disaster or disaster caused by the exposure of living organism to germs and toxic substance. These are epidemic, insect infestation, and then animal stampede. In natural disaster, according to the report in 2012, there were 905 natural catastrophic worldwide, out of which 93% were natural disaster. In that, if we are categorizing, means 5% are meteorological, 36% are hydrological, 12% are climatological, and then 7% are geo. If we see classification of disaster, major natural disasters are caused by flood, cyclone, drought, and then earthquake. In the same way, minor natural disasters are caused by cold wave, thunderstorm, heat wave, mudslide, and then storm. Now we are seeing about man-made disaster. Technological or man-made hazards are events that are caused by human and occurrence in or close to human settlements. These are mostly caused due to certain human condition. They are social disaster, and then political disaster, and then industrial disaster, and then human disaster. In that, social disaster, arisen is the crime of intentionally and cruelly setting fire to building, wild land, vehicles or other properties with the intention to cause damage. Civil disorders, also known as civic unrest or civic strife caused by a group of people. Terrorism is the systematic use of violence as a mean of coercion of political purpose. Political disasters are having the following types: war, chemical weapon, biological weapon, nuclear weapon, and then armed conflicts. In that, we are seeing wars is the organized and often prolonged conflict that is carried by state or non-state action, is characterized by extreme violence, social disruption, and economic destruction. Types of wars based on the weapons are chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons, and then armed conflicts. In that, massacre, a massacre is a specific incident in which a military force, mob, or other group killed many people, and the perpetrating party is preserved as in the control of force, where the victimized party is preserved as helpless or innocent. Now we are seeing man-made disasters, industrial disasters, having chemical spills, explosions, transportation accidents. In the chemical spills is a reason occurring during the production, transportation, or handling of hazardous chemical substance. In explosion, an explosion can be involved in industrial structures. An explosion is a rapid increase in volume and releasing of energy in an extreme manner. Those are nuclear plant explosion and radiation, explosion to other industrial plants. Transportation accidents. Transportation accidents refers to accidents involving mechanized model of transport. They are air, water, railway, and roadway. The fourth, engineering failure. Engineering is the science and technology used to meet the need and demand of society. This includes building aircrafts, etc. For example, structural collapses. Now we are seeing in a man-made disaster, human disaster. Human disaster or disaster that takes place due to intentional or unintentional human behavior. If we are seeing human error of judgment, stampede, aeroplane crash, road accidents. Poisoning like food poisoning, carbon monoxide poisoning. A disaster is an unfortunate event that causes a large number of fatalities and damages. The increasing tends towards losses of both livings and properties can be attributed to two broad reasons: the increase in the population density worldwide, the standards of living having augmented has various dimensions of disaster: economical, political, psychological, and social type. Whatever the disasters, either it is a natural or man-made, a typical effect of disasters may be one or more, are loss of life, injury, damage to and destruction of property, damage to and destruction of plantation and crops, disruption of production, disruption of life cycle, disruption of transport, loss of livelihood and occupation to people, disruption to essential service like electricity, water supply, and gas supply, damage to national infrastructure, disruption of communication and other networks, disruption to government system and schemes, shortage of food reserves, spreading of diseases, national economic loss, sociological effects, psychological after effects are the main causes which leads to effects of disaster. In this class we seen about what is disaster and its types. Thanks for listening this section.